Nairobi. So ladies and gentlemen, she is also the chairperson of NAIL, and she'll be talking to us. She will be talking to us on the future of NAIL, which is a network of entrepreneurial institutions leaders, and she will be talking on progress and prospects, and also call to formal expansion on membership, being the chairperson of NAIL. So ladies and gentlemen, without wasting much time, let's give another round of applause for Professor Margaret, all the way from the University of Nairobi. Welcome.
Thank you very much. And good morning. With all the protocols that have already been set, good morning. Good morning once more. You see, there was a time when Africa was being seen as the backward continent. They said it was a dark continent in every aspect of development indicators. There was a time when anything that was negative was seen to be in the continent of Africa. In 2003, gentlemen and ladies, the leaders of Africa came together and said, enough is enough. We have to take our own destiny in our own hands. And in 2003, they had the Maputo Declaration. They were also very clear that it is not so much about a declaration, but taking the destiny of the continent into their own hand was not enough. Because we are a global community and partnerships are part and parcel of the human journey. And therefore, as universities, we continued on our trajectory to churn out graduates, and the University of Nairobi, being the oldest, is just as guilty as the young ones in the house today, where we had inherited an academic system that trained basically for the white-collar jobs. And so for those of us who are here in the 50s and the 60s, you saw a professor walk around campus with an angle of inclination with many books that I have read. And if you ask them what is the reading about, it was very difficult for us to translate. And then fast forward, some of us went to international schools where we studied, and we came back with the degrees. Truly yours came with the one on tissue culture. And I couldn't explain to my mother, who never saw the inside of a classroom, what I had had. And many communities will now say, my children are very learned. Some of them are vice chancellors, but we don't know what they studied. Because we decided from the policy framework that we would look for the publications, go up in the academic ladder, have elite institutions that almost became irrelevant on national development. But you see, there comes a time for every generation to sit back and say, what does God want us to do for our generation? You see, somebody mentioned, John Maxwell, that everything rises and falls on leadership. And so it came to a time when, as lecturers, we decided as professors, it was not enough to just train, but we had to be relevant to the aspirations of our people, both local and also continental and international. And therefore, we realized, as John Maxwell said, everything rises and falls on leadership. We decided that we were going to be the bold ones to agree to form a network of entrepreneurial institutions. Like I said, even Q will tell you all you need to be a professor is to have so many publication points, you need so many students that you have supervised, and that was enough. And so, looking globally now to say, where are we in the community of nations, we realize that Kenya is actually very poorly ranked when it comes to the issues around innovation. So we talk about innovations as if it's a password. And I'm happy that the first session actually brought out the importance of why we think innovation is something that we must commercialize. You see, even our own MPs would say, wachana na watu ni wachoka. Can you please interpret those tongues to those who would not understand? They're just watu wachoka too. And so we said, how do we commercialize this intangible asset that we can actually show the communities that there's something that is actually worth emulating, worth commercializing, so that we can start to actually contribute to national development. And so when you look at global citizens and how Kenya is ranked number 96 out of 132, that tells you we are on the lower area in terms of innovation index. What does that mean? It gets even worse, or maybe slightly better, when we look at the global startup ecosystem, because as a country, we have also agreed that when you look globally, you look at Israel, you look at Russia, you look at Ukraine, just to name a few, and the kind of technology, and of course, I don't want to forget China, the kind of technological progress that they have made us look like we are ants, even in our own eyes. But we are declaring today, as leaders, that we are going to provide that leadership to jumpstart the movement into that kind of space. And therefore, in terms of the countries that are doing very well on the GII ranking, like Switzerland, they consistently demonstrate what we desire as Kenya, what we desire as Africa, and that is the higher employment rates. Right now, I think the data suggests and indicates that Kenya is one of the worst, even in the region. The unemployment among our youth is something else, but we don't want to see it as a problem, but more as an opportunity. There is competitive business environment that is unique to those countries, world-class talent attraction, including brain drain from Africa, and a better quality of life. Those are the things that we desire for our country. Those on the lower ranking, unfortunately, struggle with underemployment, limited commercialization of our research outputs, slower business growth, just to name a few, meaning that we will remain longer on the development agenda if we don't do anything about innovation and commercialization. And therefore, in order for us to improve on that ranking, in order for us to move into the progressive group of nations, this is a time when the leaders changed and said we must think of how we can have entrepreneurial, and so leadership started. And I will just say, when you look at the challenges, there could be many, but I'm not here to give you the book of Lamentations. You all know, and I think some of them have already been highlighted. You know where we have come from. So allow me then to go and say, for the bigger picture, innovation requires time, structure, and patient capital, yet the current systems remain ad hoc. There's not that I know, very limited appreciation of innovations, even when we are looking at the promotions in our institutions of higher learning. And yet, the responsibility of moving this country to the next level does not rest anywhere. It's not in our primary schools. It's not in our secondary schools. And unfortunately, many of us have remained as glorified high schools where we don't do research, we don't do innovations. And therefore, as a result, the weight and the responsibility you heard from one of the governors this morning, they are looking up to us to look for solutions. And so without us intervening in this space, we remain just a knowledge producer where we populate both internet and also the hard copies of the theses that we produce at master's, sometimes undergraduate and PhD level, and yet we are not producing solutions for our country. That is something that should make us have sleepless nights, because we cannot just continue to be also a consumer of tech. And I will not ask anybody who made your phone, whether it's coming from tech, the Kimathi, University of Technology, or whether it's coming from somewhere else that I will not say, but we can no longer. And as I said at the beginning, there comes a time when we say we have to move with courage. We may not have the solutions, but with courage into this space. And therefore, there's an opportunity. What we have is amazing. We have a host of students, many of them very high tech and very curious. And I must confess, COVID accelerated our movement into this space. And I remember when it first came, I was chairing a department and we needed to go online. We needed to do exams online. And the old colleagues like me, it was a difficult phase. And many of them said, I would rather go and retire. How do I teach? After many years of looking for my notes, how do I put them online? Difficult movement. But now we have an opportunity. And one time I thought my students were actually getting more clever. I said, wow, I must be a good teacher, until I knew they were chat GPTing on me. I didn't realize. So more than 15,000 faculty and researchers committed, many of them in this room today. The good news is that for the last 15 or so years, I must pay tribute to Tony Omwanza, who is also a member of staff in my university, that we decided to hold the first Nairobi Innovation Week that has then spiraled into every university now, where even now counties are also having their own innovation weeks, where they are displaying the kind of innovations coming from our institutions. So we have that nascent but strong research and innovation culture that is emerging. The mindset is changing, and that progressive policy environment supporting, and I think the shows the commitment by government. I guess the only thing is that we are looking that where the mouth is, the money must also be there. So we are looking for those finances. And I remember when we had the Presidential Working Party, we said we must have a dedicated fund for innovations. It didn't come through, but commercialization into everything that we do, but also work in a very systemic manner so that it's an ecosystem, leaving no one behind. But I think the elephant in the room is, as the head of public service mentioned, money, resources are the engine that moves us. Although sometimes I think it is good to, we have actually talked together as a team and said, money will follow where ideas are. And that has been proven over and over again. And therefore, in terms of the pilot programs, you will allow me to just walk through this, because already Tony had given us about the technology transfer office as a service. We talked about the venture builders as a structured pathway towards commercialization. And the bottom line is that we have now a consultant who will help us to set up an innovation fund to support our students. Because you see, we are thinking that this network must be student-centered. So we want to have a startup school. We want to ensure that on an annual basis, the students come and have a challenge so that we pick the best brains for support. We are thinking it has to be anchored on the faculty who on a day-to-day basis impart knowledge, skills, and mentorship to our students. But also we think leadership, everything falls on leadership. The vice chancellors are the chairs of both their management boards, the senates. They are the vision carriers for the institutions. We want to ensure that on a yearly basis that we re-energize the vice chancellor so that they stop being data clerks in their offices, pushing papers and paying salaries, but more importantly, being strategic thinkers for this pathway, because our nation needs us. And therefore, you have been introduced to the governance of the NIL. We have got the 9 council members, and maybe at this stage, I think they had already stood, so they might be standing too much, so I don't know whether you want to stand up, all of you, just for us to celebrate you as the pioneer council members. Team A. Thank you very much. Asante sana. We also have trustees, as Tony said, we've already registered this as a trust, but we also have a dedicated secretariat. We actually came out of KeNIA, so allow me to invite KeNIA under the team leadership of Dr. Omwanza to stand up. The entire group of KeNIA, you are our frontline soldiers. Where are you? There you are, from there. I think the majority are at work. This is one of the hardest working group I've ever met. And that is not a long time ago. So I want to just say, if you are not in NIL, where are you? If you are not in NIL, where we are transforming, where are you? And therefore, I'm calling for all of us to come, because you see, for a strong movement to succeed, we need a critical number of members who buy into it. I need every last one of you to take up membership so that we can co-create this amazing ecosystem, so that you can also access the commercialization pathways and tools that we have already put in place through KeNIA and also through NIL. We think the shared infrastructure is critical, because you will find some of the work that we are doing at the University of Nairobi is being done in another university and is duplicated everywhere. So we want to see ourselves as one movement, not competing for the limited resources, but moving this forward to the next level as one, leaving no one behind. So if your university is here, if your research institution is here, if you are a partner in the private sector, I want to invite all of you so that we can co-create a sustainable drive, a sustainable vehicle that will take this country to the next level. You see, on the flip side, you will actually gain a lot of visibility and influence through this shared platform, because sometimes we say, what is in it for me? So as you sell to your councils and your boards that this is going to improve your visibility, influence through this shared platform, not to mention the international exposure and the steady pipelines for investments for corporate partners. Return to investment is something that you'll be looking as a private sector person, because you are not here just for the romance, but also to ensure that you get value for your investment. So we currently have about 4 types of membership: foundational, associate, full, and corporate. But today, I just want to sell the idea. The details you will get from the secretariat at neilafrica.org. When we started, we were Kenya. Then we decided, no, dream big. Neil Africa. And we don't know, maybe next time you will have Neil Global. God bless you and welcome to Neil.
Amazing, amazing. A round of applause for Prof. Wow. So Prof just asked a question. If you're not in NIL, where are you? Ask your friend, where are you? You are in? Huh? Where are you people? Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Prof, for the wonderful insights onto NIL and the way forward. And I like the fact you've spoken about innovation, and she just mentioned that innovation requires time and structure. So even some of us in the private sector working with ESOs, we know innovation is very, very key, and it takes time. But with time, Jerusalem was also built, right? Amazing. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Right about now, we want to get into a virtual session. I can see the next speaker who is speaking to us virtually is also set. But before I introduce him, we have a QR code on the screen. Kindly take your phone and download the QR code. That is for our next session, where we'll be having a little bit of the insights from Dr. Edward Gombo and Professor Kenny from Minnesota. They'll be speaking after the next speaker. So please put down your questions on that QR code and we'll be good to go. Just to remind all of us again, you can find us on our social media handles, all of them at KeNIA, all right? At KeNIA. On Facebook, on Facebook X. I'm still on Twitter, my goodness. On Facebook, X, LinkedIn, you can find us on our socials. Please, you can comment, leave something there so that people can know something like this is happening. So ladies and gentlemen, our technical department, please signal me if the speaker is already on standby so that we're able to start. All right, so let me introduce our next speaker, who is going to speak to us on opportunities for ventures for international linkages. And he's going to share with us some case studies, and that is none other than Mr. Andrew Julius Bende, who is the Senior Associate at Bioinnovation Institute. So ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Mr. Andrew Julius Bende. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome. Let's appreciate him, please. Just to confirm, are you able to hear us? Can you hear us?
Loud and clear.
Awesome, thank you. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the good and warm introduction. And bear with me in many ways for not being in Mombasa today. I had otherwise looked forward to the warm weather and the good company. Let me start by quickly observing protocol. The Chief of Staff and Head of the Public Service in absentia and the Principal Secretary from the State Department of Science, Research and Innovation, Professor Shaukar, the CEO of the Kenya National Innovation Agency, Dr. Tony Omwansa, the different professors and heads of institutions in the room, all protocol observed. Thank you so much for making time for such a big agenda and for having me to deliver these few words. I'm sitting in the comfort of my living room in Copenhagen, and that's simply because if you look on my left eye, I have also had a small incident that didn't allow me to go to office. But this is to say that, you know, with innovation and constant work at it, we now have tools and methods for me to sit all the way in Copenhagen and speak to you in Mombasa. That's innovation, that's a lot of work, that's a lot of time taken, and that's the benefits that I have and you have that we can connect now. The topic that I will present around is a topic pertinent to many. And if I have the chance to share my slides, please let me know if they are visible on your side.
Yes, they are visible. Just, yeah, visible.
Perfect.
Things.
Perfect. I'm a neighbor of yours, as introduced, Andrew Julius Bender. I come from Uganda, and for the last 2 years, I could almost call myself Kenyan. And that's because I've worked a lot with different partners, and specifically KeNIA, around the same words that are in this topic, opportunities for ventures for international linkages. I have, if you notice, underlined the words venture building success, commercialization, licensing, and across borders. And I've broken them down, down. They're not together as it is written in the program. And that's because in many ways, commercializing and licensing and going across borders starts from a certain point. But to build ventures and connect all these words, there are many words we hear. And I think Professor Hutchison and many speakers have alluded to a lot of these words. These are big words, and they run around all the time. And especially when we are thinking early venture creation, like we do at the Bioinnovation Institute in Copenhagen, or we are talking about KeNIA and working with institutions within within the research, translation, and commercialization domain, or when we are talking about research-based venture creation. These words come again and again, but I will come back to them. So what do we do at BII? And I've underlined this word venture building because it's important for us to understand that if we are going to take the journey all the way, we need to start here. And you'll see the example of the Bioinnovation Institute, and then I'll walk into other spheres. So let's look at what really created the Bioinnovation Institute. We are founded by the Novo Nordisk Foundation. We are now an independent institution, but the whole impetus for creating the Bioinnovation Institute was the realization that life science startups, especially those at the early stage, were not coming out of research laboratories. And so there needed to be someone to play that role of catalyzing and translating this research to the benefit of society. And the Novo Nordisk Foundation, of course, found it meaningful to put up a foundation, an independent foundation that does that. And that's the Bioinnovation Institute. So what do? We catalyze and establish viable startup companies. It's important to look at this word viable, because as you saw in the table with many words, market access, or bringing things to market, is the real reason your technology will make sense to the world. I mean, unless people are gonna pay for it fully, then that's a free ticket. But so that's what we do, really. And we do this through an incubation process where we combine real company creation, really taking ideas with scientists and creating a company, but also taking in very early stage companies and building them towards maturity to come to market. When Professor Shaukat and Dr. Tony and the other professors were in Copenhagen a few weeks ago, Professor Ilo asked our CEO, did you have to fundraise for this? And his answer was delayed. And that's because we had the funding. We have full funding. So you'll notice that we give these companies about 30 million euros a year, and that creates about 35 projects every year. Our work is science-led, science-based. And I know from conversations with the rest of you that this bioeconomy research translation is on your mind, and growing that number of universities from 5 to 11 to 25, I think that is a really interesting development you're on here. So let me see, how do we then structure this work? Many of you have already seen this, but we go in and work with researchers in the BioStudio program, and we help them build a company. Again, we have the financing, and that takes about 3 years for us to build a bio company in that program. Then we have the Venture Lab and Venture House, which we call the Venture Creation Program. And the difference between the two is that there is a progression. You either progress on to the next, or you remain, or you get up. And that is for early stage companies to build towards maturity so they can attract others. And then we know that across the last few years, we have put a very significant contribution to the Danish life science ecosystem. And that's because it's not only the numbers you see on the screen, but both the peers in the room and Dr. Tony and the professors that were in Denmark will tell you that everywhere we went, the Bioinnovation Institute was a stakeholder. Either many companies fed into us, or policy needed our guidance on how you build a Danish life science, or we were part of the discussion on how you do this. And yes, all that is important, but at the end of the day, that wouldn't happen if people were not seeing that if we gave 120 million euros, we raised 840, and that we created jobs. So this interplay is important for us to both make sure that we have a framework that others can use, but also a framework that shows concrete results on when you give us your money, we will work. When we tell you we are going to do this, we will deliver something. And then I need, so what then do companies gain out of the Bioinnovation Institute? We say we build knowledge, and that we can go into detail later. We do networks across these companies and cohorts, which builds them. We have infrastructure and, of course, funding. But all this really connects into this model that you've already seen, many of you, that to take a research project from zero, or from university, not zero, from a university lab towards market takes a lot of stakeholders. Our job really on a daily basis is to connect those dots. So, summing up the venture building programming here, if you want to take the company up to societal resilience, or maybe even before that, if you want someone else to invest into that company, or an institution to put money into it, or someone wants to give you a grant at the seed level, or BII needs to give you money within the pre-seed, then at the university, at the institutional level, or corporate innovation level, there has to be magic happening. And I think what you're doing, mobilizing universities and heads of universities to do this work, which for us is so foundational, so fundamental, is really the beginning of the words that we are talking about here. Venture building and taking that into commercialization, and then looking at licensing, and then taking it around across borders. So let me go a little bit into Now you know how we build ventures. Let's say you have a snapshot. So how do we actually enable this research, commercialization, and IP? And what thoughts do we have there? I'll come back to this because now you have built a venture. You have been in your lab and you have researched immensely. You have a strong team, and you want to bring a product to market. I know that many of you have run into the question, where is your market? Will this product come to market? Is the product needed on the market? And the other thing about the market is, will you be able to scale this? And of course, we can say that there is technologies, even in the Bioinnovation Institute, where we have no clear path to market. But trust me, before we select a startup, a company, an idea for further building, we have to think market. Then let's look at the capital, funds, investments, and financing. You can bootstrap. It's common, but it's really rare when it's within the bioeconomy, life science, because here you're looking for big checks. And that's something that you have to think about early in your journey. Then we need to look at policy and multi-stakeholder engagements. Here you have the chance that the government is so interested in this. This is really what built the Danish ecosystem. That the government knew that with the size of the country and the population and the space, the geographical space, we needed to invest heavily in policies that enable that a company in Denmark can grow in Denmark, but scale heavily other places. Then knowledge and technological transfer. Build knowledge, create research collaborations, connect with hubs. And I think this both works for the universities, because I know this is your strength, you do this. But when we are looking at cross-border or commercialization or tapping into other systems and markets, really connecting with others and tech brokering and collaborations then becomes so key and central. And then let's look at the community impact, because this is interesting. Of course, almost everything we create has community and social impact. But at the end of the day, the market will be defined by whether there is real connectivity to the society you're trying to go into. And of course, succeeding in that market really depends so much on how aware you are and which linkages you have connected to the different markets and societies you're going into. And of course, if you're going to build a strong ecosystem, skills and talent development, that we have seen time and again, that's really what creates the research agenda, the research ideas that then come into into ideas for venture creation and company building. But let me give you a few examples on how BII circumvents some of this. Not all, but how we do this. We have our BioStudio program, which you've seen before, and this will go a little bit into IP. So this is a program, as said, where we catalyze, we try to move a research novel idea from being a research project to becoming a company. And that we have 3 years to do. And we give them money. So we will give them about 1 million euros per year. And we do all the facilitation of raising for that financing, for the funding. In Denmark, we have the greatest advantage that all IP in universities is owned by the institution, the research institution. Here, mainly universities and other research institutions. They have kind of the ownership, and it's easy for us then to go and work with them to either license or use the IP for a certain specific period. Here we have 3 years. So it's very easy for us to go in and make an agreement with the institution to use that IP within the 3 years. Now, you'll ask me, what if you go elsewhere? We have teams of legal experts that will help us on that. And that depends on which IP you're using. It's really up to which product, which startup you're working with. But that's where BII assists in devising solid IP strategy with a host of consultants helping. How do we source projects? Well, we source internationally in this program. And why is this international while the venture creation program is not international? This is because we know that at this level, the science we are looking for is not only in Denmark. We need global teams to be able to do this, what we are doing at that level. And then let's try to go into the team. We normally take on a principal investigator who is leading this program. We take them out of the institutional setting and ensure that they have a contract as a consultant with the Bioinnovation Institute. And that frees them to be able to build the program, the project. We hire an entrepreneur in residence that helps the project go on. As a first CEO, you could say that. And then we bring in researchers. And then we make sure that these activities are, yes, based in Copenhagen, but all these teams are commonly diverse and international. And so you'll find that you'll have teams at Uton in Germany, you'll have people at Basel in Switzerland, you'll have people in Boston, but working around the same idea. And that helps in both understanding what's happening around this research elsewhere, and which route, which market should we focus on in the development of the product. And then, of course, the company creation. As I mentioned earlier, the market is important, but the market really depends on, and you're going to market really depends on whether someone will pay for this product to go to market. And so investing in early investigation towards funding is important for us. And you'll see later on that we have created a whole venture capital network at BII, and we assist these companies in forming a very strong advisory board, as well as building a very strong team. So that's part of helping a company, an idea from an idea to becoming a startup. But let's try to go to what if it's a little bit a mature company, let's say an early stage startup. I don't know how much you can see of this on the screen, but I'll try to run through. So on the left side, we have the key challenge here. This is normally in our venture creation program. The challenges and solutions in food tech, let's say. And what on the other side, we have what obstacles that startups within this space will normally find. This is a framework that we've built over the years, because by building companies and seeing some of these companies come to market and running into a lot of walls, we have also realized you could do a lot of things that help ease that journey, not only in Denmark, but also help them go to other markets elsewhere across borders. So key challenges, let's take an example. Animal deprived proteins destroy the planet, but the potential of alternative proteins remains to be unlocked. Key solutions by BII enable sustainable production of non-animal derived proteins, and so we take in projects that will work on something like that. Then we know, but for us to build this company, we have a lot of obstacles. One of the obstacles, access to food industry. These are young scientists, maybe mature scientists, but they have never worked or connected with the industry. Market access, product quality, scalability, regulatory hurdles. We then put our team around helping these companies to navigate these things. and that provides support and collaboration opportunities to enable access to, for example, food industry, or build stronger retailer network around food tech startups, or product quality, focus on sensory characterization of that. This is an example of what happens when we are working with these startups. But what the example here is to give you an idea on it's not enough to build the venture. Maybe even more important is how much structure you're putting around understanding what the venture is going to run into. What are the common traits that we see that kill ventures? And what resources and capabilities can we put around these ventures so we increase the chances of success? Really, the job then is not to give handouts to a venture and say, go try out. The job here, and that's going to be the job that the NIL network in support of KeNIA and hopefully the whole Kenya innovation ecosystem to think deep in what have we learned over the years that when we give resources, put resources around this translation, venture creation, research translation, and commercialization, and do it successfully, which things should we put competencies and capacities around to help? And I think, Dr. Tony and your team, you are thinking constantly on creating a central organ that helps on things like this. So for me to give an example like this, then I know lands in a place where there is goodwill already, and I really hope that other leaders, institutional leaders in the room, and especially from the private sector, see that your work around creating a framework for bringing these startups from ideas in laboratories to a place where they can be picked up, plays also in their value chain and in the future of the Kenya research translation programming. So let me try to show you the other things we do around these startups. And I know you've seen this, but I can't overemphasize this. This, what you see on the screen, is the way we choose companies. Now, normally we have said that they are due diligence, but now you see a word, coachable founders. And because we are in very early stage, and forgive me, scientists, but when we are scientists, we tend to know our science so well that no one else can tell us whether it will work on the market or not. And so we have learned over time that if we are going to scale companies, then we need the scientists to also be coachable, the founders to be coachable, to understand that there's many others that have done this and have run into walls over time, and they have learned that these walls exist, and so create strategies for helping you to navigate that space. And this is what we are trying to do also in the due diligence, the selection of these companies. So we know that when we have done the first pre-screening and we go into stage 2, we need to send these startup ideas to people that are playing in the market. And that is both here in Denmark, but also global. And you can see many companies that are global here. And that helps us because we know that a lot of our companies we build in Denmark, we look at the USA, they will look at Canada, they'll look at the Caribbean, they will look at Japan, China, name it. So we get people that understand these markets. They understand these industries, they understand how to work with IP, and they have knowledge of what's going to happen when we start working with a novel idea, a novel science that we have not built before, or that we've built, but built in another context. And then when we have selected, we now cut down on the number, again, we send these ideas to another level of, again, other eyes within the ecosystem to look at and say, well, within the therapeutics, we know this technology exists. the new thing you're coming with here will not beat the market, the one on market, unless you're building it for within the next 25 years. Or if you build this, well, what's on market can be tweaked easily to match exactly what you're trying to build. So then you don't invest a lot of financing on an idea that will not commercialize. That is the catch here. And yes, there will be science, but we also tell scientists that if you find that your idea can fit another value chain, then build it for that. But if it's not going to be a product that comes to market and becomes a player on the market, which then is the impetus for others to finance it or fund it, then it's very difficult for you to start building something like that. So this here due diligence process plays that role for us too. And then of course, we have talked about investments. Trust me or not, a founder trying both to build a company, or in this case, researching and maturing the science to become a product, which normally takes 3, 5, 10 years, and then at the same time trying to convince people on his own that he needs funding for this, and not just convincing, but looking for who is funding. That is a big job to do. It's heavy shoes. So what have we done? We have created an investor list. And that makes it easy for our founder that from the day the idea comes into our system, their job is, yes, have your eyes out there. Whatever comes out as a possible investor, potential investor, go out to them. But we have a list of 180 investors, maybe even more, that we send your pitch now and again for them to look and give advice. And I've said it again, if you decide to go this way, then you also need to tell your VC network that what you want is not, no, this idea is bad. What you want is, well, this idea here could work, but tweak it this way, this way, this way. Maybe it will not work, but you know what? If you connect it with someone else, oh, what if you pivot and build something else? Because that we could be interested in. Because then you don't kill the research, you don't kill the science, and that's what you need. Remember, the bedrock of innovation is the people thinking.
Wow.
So this is one of the things that has triggered what we have been doing. Now let's look at opportunities for linkages, and this is interesting for me because what does it benefit you to build companies that will stay in Denmark with a population of 5 million people? Mm-hmm. And that has been the DNA of how Denmark has built the ecosystem here. And you can mention whether it's within the therapeutics, whether it's within the medtech, whether it's within the agtech space, whether it's within everywhere, you'll find that Danish products are somewhere else in the world.
Okay.
Because we simply don't have the population to be the market.
Excuse me.
So this is.
Excuse me, our
am
speaker.
I out of time?
If you can hear me, because
yes.
of time, maybe you could do a wrap up in the next 2 minutes, please. Because of time,
yes.
then
this
you
is
proceed. Thank you.
2 minutes of wrap up, and this is gonna be things that we could work further on. This is from a very Danish point of view. Last year, the Danish government produced a new strategy, but we also know that this strategy was produced because we see real opportunities in Africa. And that is because, the population will be there, the technology is there. When we had our guests, the PS and Tony, it didn't matter where we were. Everyone knew that Kenya had the ability to produce science. What remains is connecting the dots for that science to come to market and benefit society. We know that the world is interested in what Africa is developing, is having on its side. Of course, we can go the side of the mineral, exploitation. But we also know that many strategies are looking at building equal partnerships. So we see a very strong Danish agenda coming up the next 10, 15 years. If you have the chance, find Africa's Century strategy. We are studying, and university after university, department after department, agency after agency in Denmark are starting to build along this strategy, and we believe it's a longer term. And with the exit of the US through USAID from a lot of this space, we see this being one of the agendas that will drive the Danish interests.
Wow.
On top of that, the Danish, this story is still only in Danish because it's too new. It came out just 2 months ago. But we also have a development strategy, and that strategy puts all the development work around the different entities that will work. And I want to mention that up here, you have private sector and you have research institutions, and of course government coming in very strongly, even though it's a development strategy and only represented by the development sector on the other side. And then I need to mention, of course, you know already that there is the intercontinental frameworks. We have the African Union, but we also have the AU-EU Innovation Agenda. This for me is interesting, especially for universities and research translation. It gives a very clear modality, and there comes a lot of EU financing around, of course competitive, but partnerships can be built around an agenda like this. We could go on and on. The UN has opportunities, but let me end with the very special program we run at the Bioinnovation Institute in partnership with the Novo Nordisk Foundation and Gates Foundation, and that is the Emerging Market Initiative, where we are building bridges to tech startups from Denmark to the global south, but also constantly making sure that we do this in a locally anchored model and being contributive to the local ecosystem. So this is some of the things that I want to, I thought I could talk a little bit about and open for questions. And I hope it made sense and it tinctures some thoughts on your journey. Thank you so much for the time.
Wow, let's appreciate Mr. Andrew Julius Bende for that insightful session. I know we have picked quite a number of things, and we will be sure to implement them in our universities and research stations where we are coming from. Good afternoon. It's afternoon already, right? Awesome. So because of time, and when you look at the program, I know we still have 2 more sessions before lunch, right? But I'd like to request if we could just do 1 more session, the quick fire one, and then we break for lunch at 1:20, and then we come back after 40 minutes. That's fine with us. Then we do the panel after the lunch. So I want us to stand a little bit. We stretch for 1 minute as I'll be inviting on stage 2 of our speakers who will be taking us through the quick fireside chat. And then I hope all of us have sent their questions through the QR code. Please ensure you send your questions. Okay, so we are in Mombasa, and Mombasa is known for coconut, right? Coconut is our fruit here at the coast. And I'm sure when you're still within this place, ensure you taste some of the Swahili dishes that have been cooked with coconut. Okay? So I want us to draw the word coconut on the air as a way of just exercising and stretching a little bit as you prepare for the next speakers who are coming on board. So take this as an exercise session, because I know we've been sitting for quite some time. So let's draw the word coconut on the air, and it's going to be very simple. I'm seeing Prof. They're already trying to imagine, okay? So we spell the word C. How do we spell the word C? This is how I spell it, C. So you make sure you land on this side, C a little bit as you stretch, and then O, you just do the O, you know, exactly. And then the C, we go down a little bit, and then the O, and then the N, we bend a little bit, and then the U, and then the N, T. Okay, so let's do it. COCONUT. Are we together? 1, 2, 3, let's go. C, O, C, O, N, U, T. So some of us didn't get it the first time, right? So let's do it the last time. And I want us to spell it loudly as we do the actions, okay? So 1, 2, 3, go. C. C, C, O, N, U, T. Let's appreciate ourselves for that. So I want to call upon the next speakers on stage. We're going to do a very quick fireside chat. The first speaker that I want to call on stage already has been here, Dr. Kenneth Karanja, Technology Licensing Officer, all the way from the University of Minnesota. And then we have Dr. Edwell Gumbo, who is the Director of Entrepreneurship at Universities, South Africa. They'll be taking us through a quick fires chat, and we have an opportunity to share our questions with them, and they'll be able to give us some answers. So before they delve into that, I just want to invite them for 2 minutes to introduce themselves and what they do, and a quick statement, then we get to the Q&A. Welcome. Let's appreciate them.
So just introduce ourselves. So my name is KeNIA Karanja. I'm a technology licensing officer for the University of Minnesota. Been doing that for about 10 years. Prior to that, 20 years as one of you doing wet science. Glad to be here and glad to take your questions.
Okay, good afternoon. Edwell Gumbo is my name. I am a Director of Entrepreneurship at Universities South Africa. That is a representative organization for all the public universities in South Africa, where the program Entrepreneurship Development in Higher Education is located, with a mandate of 3 focus areas: stimulating, enhancing, and supporting student entrepreneurship. The second one being staff capacity development, how to capacitate our academics in embedding entrepreneurship into the curriculum. And the third focus area, looking at the institution itself, the university. How does it mean and what it means, what it should do to become an entrepreneurial university? Thank you.
Thank you so very much, our speakers. And maybe in a minute, you can share with us some insights on the topic that on business models, like how it has worked in Minnesota and how it's working in the university in South Africa in a minute. On business models, yes.
Minnesota. So our business model really, so I stand in for technology commercialization. So our business model is to extract as much financial upside from the technologies that are developed by our scientists. And of course, our tech transfer is the main avenue that we accomplish that. And we do that either by licensing or spinning out companies. So every year we spin out about 25 companies. And part of the previous speaker talked about linking those particular assets. We look at our IP as an asset to a particular market consideration. And subsequent to that, if it's successful, we get in a revenue stream from either licensing or equity in the startups that we found.
Yeah, in South Africa, we are reimagining the future of the university, looking at the traditional setup of a university being institutions of teaching, learning, and research, to say, then how do we enable them as entrepreneurial ecosystems that will produce, firstly, entrepreneurial graduates, as well as supporting innovation and the commercialization of the research that comes out of our public institutions.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So, to our panelists, allow me to call you that. There are some questions that had already been sent, and I just want to maybe go through a few of them, and then you could respond. So, we have one of us who asked about how can universities practically protect student startups from being absorbed or exploited by bigger companies while still encouraging collaboration?
Quick one. For us, we
Yes.
encourage them to take them as long as they pay us. So students who are founding companies and there is a big company that wants to acquire it, we are all for it so long as we get value for the money we put into the startup. So we don't necessarily protect it per se if they're interested in acquiring it. Protecting the idea itself, that's a different question, and we do that through intellectual property processes. We file copyrights, patents, and hopefully the company is not going to infringe. If, on the other hand, they want to infringe, we litigate that as one of the business models for getting income. So when you're looking into your asset and you're protecting it via an IP, if that company then infringes, we sue them, and we do get quite a bit of revenue from litigating against infringers.
Amazing. That's happening in the United States, right?
It could happen here. You can litigate. Your patents are also done in Kenya. KeNIA issues patents. If there's a company infringing on it, absolutely take them to court. They pay, or they take a license.
Thank you very much. How about in South Africa?
I'll say that's the global standard, because the issue of patent is not only limited to one geographic area. When you register a patent, you register it in major economies in the world. That protects your IP. But over and beyond that, in your question, to say how do we protect your startups or student startups from being exploited? I think at the end of the day, that's the function of the Technology Transfer Office to offer that protection and ensure that when one enters into a commercial arrangement, it is commercially sound, and one is able to actually go through the contract before you sign. Because you can have a patent, but you can actually miss it in terms of the economic gains during licensing. And this is where you need astute legal people in the Technology Transfer Office to be able to support that. And it goes beyond even the TTO. It now, it's a commercial, now you're talking commercial terms. How do you agree to commercial terms with the corporates, and not just the corporates, it can be even your financiers, your VCs, your investors. I think, as I say, it's a commercial arrangement, and founders or students need to be astute. They need to be supported. As well as academics, they need to be supported. Universities need to be supported. And they need to be aware that when you venture into that space, it's a different space. We talk commercials, we talk numbers, we talk impact, we talk KPIs. One has to be aware of that.
Just
Amazing.
A quick follow on to his comment, because the contracting phase is very important in doing that protection. So when you have a student startup, the contract should stipulate the conditions for which they operate and people who want to interact with them. So I do agree that contracting is key.
Absolutely. And the startups need to be guided by a legal entity. Thank you very much. I think this is very clear to all the startups in the room. And the next question that I'm seeing here, should universities treat industry partners as sponsors, co-investors, or co-owners when funding innovation hubs and research labs? And which model works best in practice?
I'll say all of the above. I think context will determine, industry standards or sectoral standards will determine whether you call it a sponsor, a funder. I think it depends in terms of what they're bringing to the table. And to what extent is the risk going to be shared? Because I think the key thing here is, especially at early stage, one may just have research, can be a patent, it can be a prototype at prototype stage. One is able to take massive risk. And the massive risk is not only carried by the founder or the inventor of the patent. There are other partners that may be involved, and those are your are your corporates, those are your funders. So it depends on what arrangement and what risk each entity carries. This also links to the first question in terms of protection. I've seen that universities, I think quite a number of startups from universities or founders, they tend to be risk averse. But when we talk entrepreneurship, there's a lot of risk involved. And one needs to be able to be aware that there is risk. You get into partners, share that risk, and know who carries that risk and what happens if the product then is not commercializable, there's no market for it, because that happens in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I concur with that, all of the above. The way we discriminate those is based on what the contract that establishes that relationship, what that contract says. So the person can be a sponsor, the person can be a donor, no expectation. I mean, the person meaning the company. The company can also be there to co-create. So we have processes that allow for those different buckets to exist. It could be the same company doing all three, or a different company doing each.
Amazing. Thank you so very much on that response. And now moving on to, I understand we have TVETs also in the room, and there's a question on that. How do we embed entrepreneurship into the DNA of universities and TVETs rather than treating it as an extra program? I think most universities treat it as an extra program, and they kind of...
Yeah. So, I mean, this goes to this whole conversation of
Yes.
why we are here, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, some places have programs, which is fine, but as a matter of practice, and what we are trying to establish is doing this whole entrepreneurial thinking and design thinking from elementary school. So part of this is the whole ecosystem and mindset change that we are doing. So just having a program, it's good, but not sufficient. The sufficiency will come in making sure that our whole academic system internalizes that aspect of innovation, design thinking, problem solving, thinking outside the box, and maybe creating another box. I don't think we need another box, but hey, that whole aspect. So,
Yeah, from my side, I'll say it's all about what competencies and attributes one wants to introduce to the graduates, and embedding that, it has to be right across faculties, across all courses. But above everything else, one has to get to a point where it is measured. If universities don't measure, and not just the output, I think that's the greatest challenges, that we tend to focus on the output as compared to the outcomes. What are we seeking to achieve? What are the broader goals? So when we are measuring it, then we will ensure that it gets done. It also includes even the support staff, the academics that will be passionate about supporting student entrepreneurship at our universities. Where we've seen it in South Africa, where it started initially as volunteers. People are volunteering their time over and beyond their day-to-day activities. There's always so much that we can do to stretch a volunteer, because it's not in their KPI, it's not being measured. There is no one it's not even in the institutional KPI. So if it's not there, it's not going to be measured, and we're going to get half-baked solutions every time.
I agree with you on that. And ladies and gentlemen, we also provide some room to members who are within here with a question. And I can see there is one who had requested, Alex from KeNIA University. I don't know where you are. Alex, if you could just come forward and maybe put your question across to our panelists, that will be good. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Alexander Njuguna from KeNIA University. And the question actually had maybe one of it has mostly been highlighted, but maybe we could be more clearer when it comes to when it comes to technology transfer office, when it comes to the protection of the IPs. There is the fact, okay, as you said, licensing to the big tech companies and the big companies, it's quite good. But in your experience, what mostly are the best models, maybe when it comes to, is it the licensing part, or do you sell out the whole IP, or basically when it comes to IP commercialization and the business model that best benefits the university? What would you highly highlight on that? Or what would you best advise on that, even as an institution, to universities and also to TVETs? Thank you. Hopefully you got my question.
Yeah, I'm trying to digest that question. So you're asking how do we decide which model to employ?
Yes, based on your expertise in the technology transfer,
Right.
which models have best worked for you in Minnesota and also in South Africa?
So the TRL levels, if we're familiar with them, the early TRL levels, often technologies in that space end up in a startup. And the reason is what we were talking about, de-risking. If a technology needs to be de-risked, the previous speaker talked about that, it's probably an early technology, most likely going to a startup company, because then the startup can bear significant more risk, which is amazing, right? The big companies with the money don't want the risk, so they have startups bearing that risk to fundraise and de-risk the technology as well. If it's a mature technology, it's probably in a space where there is a product or a competitor who wants that technology, so we license that to an established company.
Yeah, I think to add on that, this is where the university becomes a strategic institution within society or in the innovation ecosystem, where we make use of our research centers, our research labs to actually develop that research up to a level that is acceptable, even investors. Investors, they come in at certain TRL, maybe 4 or 5. They will not be involved right from TRL 1, etc. So you have to look into that. And when it comes to say what are the best models, firstly, I think one has to align with the legislative environment. What laws govern the patenting and the licensing? They should be, I think KeNIA has its own laws around that, but there's also international laws regarding the patenting and the protection. But I've been around the entrepreneurial ecosystem more. I've seen that sometimes in Africa we tend to speak more of protection than taking it to the market. What are we protecting? How many of our IPs have been stolen? I think we need to start asking that question. We have the legislative environment. Sorry, I'm now provoking you. We have the legislative environment that seeks to protect that. But why so much fixation on the protection when you're not seeing the output? I think we need to ask ourselves that question, especially as universities. Yesterday with the VCs, somebody mentioned, I think you said in one of the universities, they are producing, is it 1 a month? It said Madras in India. When I was at Wits University in South Africa, Johannesburg, we received from the University of Edinburgh, they're telling us that they commercialize more than 100 a year. They asked us how many as a university in Johannesburg, highly rated on the continent, how many we commercialize in our 100 years of existence. Guess what? It's even less than 100 in 100 years. They are doing 100 a year. So I'm saying we need to start asking those questions when it comes to, is it the focus, protection? We have the TTO offices. Should that be the focus, or the focus should be on the commercialization?
Amazing. That is thought-provoking indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, I have one more opportunity to give to any of us, especially those of us who are coming from the TVETs, research organizations, industry. If you have a burning question that you want maybe to ask our panelists, please. I think he was the first person to raise his hand. Yes, please. Welcome. I think we can hear you. Just come forward, you can use my mic. Just come, you can use my mic. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Fred Ododa, Research Coordinator, Ceil National Polytechnic, a TVET institution. Thank you very much to the panelists under the topic on universities and TVET. Now, my main question is, TVET has been having a lot of innovations, and we have startups within the TVET institutions, but our major problem comes when we want to do the commercialization. So how do we bring the TVET institutions on board and also support these TVET institutions and also help them to commercialize their innovations? Thank you.
So the gap is you have the innovation, the commercialization is the challenge, right? So I think part of the conversation today is linkages. Given that TVETs, we are not like universities, perhaps our resources are not as much. Having linkages in academia, industry linkages would be one of those avenues for you to try and commercialize, and especially if your IP or your asset has a market application, I would surmise it would be ideal to talk to a company in that industry. I know there's a challenge about the maturity of industries and whether they are ready to take up technologies. I think they should be here, hopefully next time they are, because they are also a player in this whole ecosystem development. But they understand that TVETs have technologies that are applicable to them. But if that, regardless of that, if your technology is solving a market need and someone is willing to pay for it, what this whole conversation of startups and licensing still applies to TVETs. No, not just university.
Yeah, if I may comment, from South Africa, we have had those discussions regarding the TVETs, where a term has been used to refer TVETs as the stepchild. I'm not sure if it's like there in Kenya. When I say stepchild, they don't get the best meat, they don't get the best food. They tend to be neglected. So one of the strategies that we adopted was to try and pair TVETs with universities to say, let's open up a partnership where TVETs have access to universities, where sometimes they can co-create, make use of the research facilities at the university. Because my understanding of TVETs is more on a technical nature. And by the way, not everything is patentable, but we can commercialize it. We don't need to be patenting everything. It's not patentable, but we can commercialize. It can be the process. It can be anything that we create, even at the TVETs. And if you partner with a university, I think you may get that support and the assistance. After all, it's all, in South Africa, we call it the post-school education and training, the PSET sector, with one intended outcome, economic development of our country as well as the continent.
And just a quick follow-on to your comment about patentability, which reminds me. So yeah, not everything is patentable, and some non-patentable things actually are very valuable. I give this, so part of the question my family here in Kenya asked me is, what do you do? So I told my mother-in-law I sell mice. And she was like, what? What do you mean? You sell mice? And I told her, yeah, I sell mice. And one of them costs 1 million Kenya shillings. And she's like, you know how many mice I have in this farm? Can you commercialize all these? I can send them all to you. So point is, you can commercialize like mice, animal models, tools, research tools that are not patented.
Wow, thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. So we've received numerous questions, only that time could not allow us to delve into each and every one of those questions. But the panelists are here. I think they will share their contacts with us. So please, I don't know if it's okay, you create a WhatsApp group so that we can be able to respond to those questions. But anyway, whichever model that would work, we really appreciate if you could also give more insights on those questions that have been asked. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's applaud them as they go back to their seats, as I share with us some bit of logistics. Thank you so much for being on the hot seat and for those insights. So we are headed for lunch, and our lunch is provided on the left side. As you exit, you'll receive a meal card, and then you will have your lunch where we have the expo room, okay? So all of us, we can exit through this door. Yes, George? The exit? Yes, and then you'll meet some beautiful ladies out there. They'll give you a meal card. Then ensure you have your tag on, because if you don't have one, it will be hard for them to give you a meal card, okay? So make sure you have your tag on, and it can be seen. You get your meal card, we head over for lunch. Now, we have exciting sessions coming up in the afternoon. Exciting sessions. We have very powerful panel discussions coming on board. Be sure to be here at exactly 10 minutes past 2. 10 minutes past 2, we really request you to be here so that you're able to work on time and finish on time. Thank you so much for your patience, and have yourselves a wonderful lunch.
Before Daylene, you sit down, I don't know whether she told you her name is Daylene. I've just had a few people call her Darlene. So I just wanted to correct that as you go for lunch. I hope we can negotiate the time so that we come back just slightly past 2, right? Then we get started. Now, she talked about additional questions being responded on our WhatsApp group. And we know we are notorious for creating those WhatsApp groups, as you like calling them. But we have a better idea. So by now, you should have received a link to join our Ceil Summit networking forum. So guys, we know you don't know this, but we've created a Tinder for you. So please check your email addresses, and you'll be able to get access to the networking platform. You will be able to link up with whoever you want to catch up with. If it's Karanja, Dr. Karanja, all the way from Minnesota, you will definitely engage him, and we will have a nice time for the next 1.5 days. So guys, for more premium jokes, see you at 2:10, okay? Thank you. Have a nice lunch.